Welcome to this podcast. I'm very excited that you will join us for an interview with Alexandre Philippe, the director of the recent movie documentary Memory, the Origins of Alien. It's a fascinating documentary that will be shown at Pacifica on January 17th till 19th, 2020 at the Coming Home to Pacifica Festival. That's going to be a great event. And Alexander will be there showing his movie and will give a lot of opportunity to reflect on the mythological story, the creative process, the beautiful art that is in it. And you will have time to also engage with Alexander because he will be there the whole weekend. Let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Michiel Klerk. I'm a Pacifica alumni. I graduated in 2008 and have been a therapist ever since. I am also fascinated by mythology and depth psychology and dreams, which is one of my passions. And I am also the founder of the Jung Society of Utah and the Jung Platform. Then I would love to say a little bit about Alexander and his movie. So let me first say something about the movie Memory, the Origins of Alien. It's a 2019 documentary that traces the origin of Ridley Scott's Alien movie, directed and written by Alexandre Philippe and produced by Carrie Diane Roy. It focuses on the idea that the film is a collective art form, not just the wider circle of writers, performers, and technicians beyond the director, but in the case of the truly great films, serendipitously access to a deeper collective unconscious, tracing the connections from Lovecraft, Francis Bacon to the Greek furries. The film was nominated for the Audience Award in Copenhagen International Documentary Festival and in Edinburgh International Film Festival. I was fascinated by the film. I even watched it twice, so you will be in for a great treat if you go to the Homecoming event at Pacifica. And please allow me to say something about this Homecoming event. The event is January 17 till 19, 2020. There are special events like a sneak preview of the 202 Film Festival, a gala dinner and award reception, authors spotlight, special alumni presentations, and tribute to Martin Luther King Jr., and more. So join Pacifica, go to the website cominghomeToPacifica.com and you can see everything about it. I can highly recommend it. Both Pacifica is a treat to be at, to mingle and meet with soulful, creative fellow explorers of the psyche. And if you like creativity and films, you'll be in for a real treat as well. Let me then introduce to you Alexandre Philippe, who I can see is already sitting ready. Alexandre is a Swiss film director, best known for his documentary films Doc of the Dead, The People vs. George Lucas, and the 2017 postmodern documentary Examination of Psycho Shower Scene, directed by Alfred Hitchcock, which was entitled 7852. Which premiered at the 2017 Sundance Film Festival. Philippe is also the creative director and co-owner of Denver-based Cinema Vertige, and his most recent commissioned work for the city of Denver garnered 4 Heartland Emmy Awards. Great that you're here, and we're very excited to see what your take is on the movie. And maybe could you summarize for the people that have forgotten or don't know Alien that well anymore, what the story is about?
Well, the basic plot of Alien revolves around the crew of a commercial starship that's basically on its way back to Earth, and the crew gets woken up, by from their cryo sleep by the computer, the called Mother, basically they're supposed to respond to a distress signal coming from a planetoid. Some of the crew are quite upset about this. They just want to get back to Earth, but basically they're contractually obligated to investigate. And so they go on the planetoid and discover this abandoned. It looks like a ship, and it's called the Derelict, as a matter of fact. And that's where they discover some strange things, including an egg chamber. One of the crew member goes down to investigate, and one of the eggs opens up, and this strange creature called the facehugger just attaches itself to his face. They bring him back on the ship, and I'm gonna have to spoil the movie, but about halfway through, they're having lunch. They think he's getting better, and this creature just bursts out of his chest. It's what we call it, of course, the chest burster. It escapes and eventually grows into this full-size alien, really sort of terrifying creature with which nobody is actually able to communicate in any way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And just in classic sort of haunted house movie scenario, kills the members of the crew one by one until we're left with basically the only survivor, who is the character of Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, and one of the two women on the crew. And she gets to kill the alien and head back to Earth.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next episode, of course.
Thank you for summarizing this story. Sure. And in 1979, this story really is a surprise that it is such a success.
Yes.
Why do you think that if we look at movies as the current day version of the fairy tale or the mythology, yeah, why do you think that this story resonated so deeply with the collective conscious and unconscious?
Well, I mean, that's a tricky question to answer in a few words, and it's obviously a question that I tried to answer over the course of the 94 minutes of my movie, Memory: The Origins of Alien. But the one thing that I will say is, and I think that's my theory, is that usually when a movie is successful at the box office, it is usually because it resonates in the culture. It is because it's the movie that people want to see at a particular time.
Yeah.
What's unique about Alien is that I don't think that this is the movie that people wanted to see. Case in point, I think people at the time wanted, from science fiction movies, I think they wanted the cute, cuddly, friendly alien. They wanted Close Encounters of the Third Kind. They wanted E.T. the Extraterrestrial. I mean, if you look at 1982, audiences embraced E.T. and they rejected The Thing, which, by the way, is another Lovecraftian tale. You look at The Thing and you look at Alien; those two are, as Lovecraftian as they get. So my argument is, Alien was not the movie that people wanted to see in 1979, but Alien was the movie that people needed to see in 1979. And what I mean by this is that I think that what I see and what certain mythologists, in fact, see in Alien is it's the bursting out of decades of frustration, obviously, with patriarchy, and the fact that there's this sort of imbalance that we've had in culture for a long, long time. Obviously, it's we live in a patriarchal culture. We're finally having a conversation now. For the past couple of years, we're starting to have a conversation about this. But you have a movie that is very explicitly dealing with images of male penetration, male, rape, male pregnancy, male birth, in a way that you had never seen before. What Cain, the character of Cain, goes through is the kind of things that women usually go through. And I think men very specifically had an extraordinarily hard time dealing with this in the movie theater when the movie came out. I mean, in fact, I've heard countless stories, not from women, but from men, saying that when Cain starts getting sick, They ran to the bathroom. They knew, they sensed something was going on, and they ran to the bathroom and just couldn't handle it. You know, you hear stories of men, you know, projectile vomiting in the movie theater, you know, things like this. I think the movie really had an effect very specifically on men, a lot more than it did on women. And I think that this is, the result is this is something that, you know, this is not the kind of stuff people wanted to see, but I think there was an unconscious sense that those were images and ideas that we needed to start processing, that we needed to start thinking about, and that eventually, in time, we're going to be able to have a conversation, a cultural conversation about it. Guess what? Here we are, 40 years later.
Yeah,
it's the 40th anniversary of Alien, and you know, just a year before, obviously, the Me Too movement came out. You know, we're starting to put, you know, a number of people to account. We're starting to have this cultural conversation, this cultural dialogue, and I think what's remarkable is that Alien is, quite frankly, a much more contemporary movie today than it was 40 years ago. And so I think the reason why it became popular is not because of how people responded to the movie. You know, it's not because they responded on a conscious level. But they responded on an unconscious level. I think there is a clear sense, I think we all know, unconsciously or subconsciously, that there is a patriarchal imbalance.
Yeah.
This was not at all in dialogue in 1979, but because there was that sense, I think that's it created, I mean, it's one of those movies that really sort of gave us a physical, visceral reaction. And it takes a long time to get over that. And I think that's what makes Alien such a special movie.
Yeah, it was a very disturbing that scene of the monster, of the alien.
Yeah.
Do you think that this alien represents a certain repressed aspect of culture that then returns back in?
You know, I'm definitely trying to draw a parallel between the alien and the Furies of Greek mythology. You know, which usually are here, you know, they avenge patricide and matricide primarily. Yeah. But they're actually summoned to correct a natural imbalance. And I think in this particular case, one could argue, you know, a patriarchal imbalance. It's almost as if, and I'm not suggesting in any way, shape, or form that the Furies are real, but you know, myths are real in our imagination, and mythological characters, demons and monsters, are alive in our imagination, and to a certain extent, it makes them real. And I think that the Furies, at least it's kind of a poetic expression, that they erupted onto the screen in 1979 at a time when people were not prepared for that. And I think you can absolutely draw a comparison between the Furies of Greek mythology and the Alien and what it does.
And I saw also that there was a parallel with colonization. So one takes, without permission, something out of space home, as if it belongs to oneself. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, it's a cautionary tale, very much. You know, you know, the tagline of the movie itself, you know, in space no one can hear you scream, sort of really summarizes this whole idea that when you go out, or when you venture out into the unknown, I mean, it is the perfect sort of journey into the unknown. When you do that, you better be careful what you do and where you go, and what you what you try to colonize, and you know, it is very much a cautionary tale, and I think that the alien itself as a creature, which of course stems from, you know, the dragons and the Renaissance demons, and you know, imagery from Hieronymus Bosch, and it's this kind of this, you know, or Pazuzu. I mean, you can see so many different mythological creatures or influences in that particular design. So it's rooted in a number of different stories and mythologies and images from our past. And Alien is very much a movie about our ancient past, but it also looks to the future and to the dangers of venturing into the unknown and what one might find when we get there.
Yeah, and like any good movie and mythology, one can look through it in different prisms or perspectives, and then see different storylines.
Absolutely.
When you talked about this going into the unknown, in fairy tales, one Marie-Louise von Franz, a famous Jungian analyst who studied fairy tales, said usually there are three situations that invite evil. One is sheer naivete, drinking, or loneliness. And what do you see as the reason that they even encountered this alien?
Well, it's interesting that if you think about it, the crew of the Nostromo pays the price. They pay the ultimate price with their life. But it's the result of a very calculated move from the company, right? Mm-hmm. There are very specific instructions, which, the one, android on the ship, Ash, has been given, is that, it is imperative to, find, well, if you get a signal from a potentially alien life form, you have to go investigate and you have to bring it back.
Yeah.
So the crew becomes expendable, and they're the ones who pay the price for the colonizing spirit of the company itself. As far as the crew is concerned, I would say, based on the model that you're giving me, it would have to be naivete. They obviously have no clue what they're, getting themselves into. And they pay the price based on that. But it's a little bit more complicated in the sense that I think you can say the crew is naive, Ash is not naive, the company itself is not naive. So
yeah, and usually in that cluster of naivete lies also lack of respect. The young hero goes on a journey, sees an old man beside the road, and then doesn't want to help the old man and goes on, and that causes the trouble.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's also a cautionary tale to not blindly follow rules and really trust on your own instinct, because if they had done that, they would probably not have encountered this alien.
Yeah, and it's and you can also see Pandora's box in a way, because you can absolutely argue that the moment they go there, literally the moment that the egg opens, they have opened a Pandora's box, which is going to reverberate over multiple sequels. Some of them better than others, granted, but from the moment that Cain, is curious enough to go and look at that egg, everything changes.
And just for the listeners or viewers, Cain is the person who finds the egg, and the alien attacks Cain.
Exactly. Yeah, it's a great scene. It's still a terrifying scene to watch today.
Yeah, it's an iconic movie.
It is, and it's really rare. I think in the history of movies, and I'm very interested, obviously, in these kind of moments, these scenes that, in a way, transcend the medium of movies and become cultural moments. There's very, very few. Obviously, 19 years earlier, you have the shower scene in Psycho, which, I've also made a film about that particular scene.
Yeah.
But these moments that are so powerful, horrific, that hit this cultural nerve, to the point where audiences, people have this universal reaction to it. They're extremely rare, And since Alien, I mean, I think really the one movie that I think that came close, not quite. I think it was the Blair Witch Project. I remember, being in New York City actually when I watched it for the first time. It's a massive movie theater. I think it was probably about 2,000 seats and was completely full. And the final shot, there was this collective sigh of dread coming from the audience, which I've never experienced since. And it really, literally, like, it gave you I could feel the chills going down my spine. And I walked out into Times Square. It was nighttime, and I was freaked out. I couldn't sleep. And I went back the next day and watched it again. It was it was the same reaction in the theater, the exact same reaction. And it's like, how many times can you think of going to a movie where you feel this that the movie affects physically affects the audience? It's once a few decades, every few decades.
It's a terrifying thought that something alien grows within and then has this destructive effect. And it's maybe a bit of a prophecy of we encounter something that is alien to us, and then it somehow gets into us and starts growing in ways that, because it starts actually small in the movie, and it grows into a full-fledged, beautiful, scary, erotic, dark character.
Yeah, I mean that's exactly. I mean, you just hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's all of that. It is beautiful and erotic and terrifying. It's all of those things at the same time, and I think that's what makes it so so disturbing. Yeah, and not only the fact that it is other, but it's also, there are certain things that we recognize in it, but there is no way to communicate with it. There's no way to know what it wants. It's like, and I think that's what makes it so terrifying.
And if it was a dream, as I love working with dreams, the $1 million question would be, who is alien? Is alien a repressed aspect from oneself, one's own sexuality that is rejected, or the patriarchy, or one's own femininity? Or is alien truly an other that has just a very destructive outcome? But I was also wondering, could we even say that alien is evil, or what would you say about that?
No, I don't think it's evil. I think it just is, and I think that's what makes it so terrifying. It's like The Birds by Hitchcock. That nobody knows why they attack. They attack, and I think that's what's so terrifying, is that there is no rhyme or reason, and it brings forward this idea that perhaps there is no God. Perhaps they're just these terrifying creatures that will tear you apart if they're given the chance, and there may not be a reason for it. And I don't think there's anything more terrifying than that. As to, what is the alien, as you said, and you listed a number of things, I think it's all of it. It's I think what makes Alien such an iconic movie, as you said, and an important movie, is that you can have all of those readings of it. And the reason for it is that the creature itself, well, first of all, the story came out of Dan O'Bannon through an extraordinary series of events, the screenwriter. And again, I'm not going to spoil it because that's in my film. But it came out...
And a good reason for the listeners and viewers to go to the Pacifica event, where you will be with the film, and they can engage in these discussions with you directly. Exactly,
yeah. But it came out very specifically of a really unique symbiosis between a screenwriter, a visionary artist, and a visionary director. And that is Dan O'Bannon, the screenwriter, H.R. Giger, who designed the creature, and Ridley Scott, of course, the director of the film. but there is something really unique that happened between O'Bannon and Giger very specifically. They were very much kindred spirits. They were attracted to the same things. They were both obsessed with Lovecraft. They were both working on their own version of the Necronomicon. They both met on the set of, well, it wasn't the set at the time because it's a movie that failed, but they met on the Dune project by Jodorowsky that never happened.
Yeah.
And the remarkable thing about Giger, his work is, it's terrifying, but it's beautiful. It's everything that Alien is.
Yeah.
It's very sexual. It's very erotic as well. Is that his work came out completely from dreams, from nightmares. He painted in a trance. This is not someone who was thinking about what he was doing. This is someone who was channeling myth, who was channeling images from thousands of years ago. And I think that's why you look at the Alien and it connects with us. It connects, with us from, it doesn't matter, where you are in the cultural spectrum, it will connect with you on some level. But
you have a beautiful piece in the movie also where you can see him channel.
Yes.
And really give form to creativity.
Absolutely. I mean, it's one of those rare artists that really, has that. It's almost like this sort of connection with the divine in a way, So I think that's why it resonates with us on that level. But you needed to have that connection between, between the screenwriter, the artist, designer, and the director to execute that vision as well. Otherwise, Alien would never have worked. It would never have resonated with culture in this particular way.
And that's also fascinating in your movie. You really show how this movie also as a creative art comes into the world. And so there's so many angles people can take from watching this. We just talked a bit about the mythological structure, but there's also this deep pattern of how does creativity, how does this creative process be?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Memory is very much a film about, well, it's obviously a film about the collective unconscious. It's a mythological take on Alien, but it's also very much a look at the creative process and very specifically the symbiosis that can happen between certain artists and movie making as a collaborative process. Some movies are more collaborative than others, but I think Alien is a great example of a collaborative process with a number of extraordinary people. You look at the cast and crew; it's unbelievable.
Yeah. It's once in a while these life paths come together and somehow they get orchestrated into bringing something beautiful into the world.
Oh, for sure, yeah. It's a rare movie, and I think it needs to be cherished and celebrated. And I think we should all be really thankful and glad that we have Alien in our lives, because I think, as Will Lynn, of course, the great mythologist who will be with us in Pacifica, says, and that's one of my favorite lines of his. He says you can never get to the bottom of Alien, and I think that's probably true of every great myth, probably true of every powerful dream. You can never get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, it provides a lens for seeing one's life in so many facets.
Yeah.
People have a great chance to see this fascinating movie, and I must say I actually saw it twice. It is so rich and dense and beautiful done, so compliments, and I think the audience will really enjoy it, and they have the beautiful chance to engage with you in a conversation about whatever this myth sparks in them, their own alien, their own encounters with other, which our current culture has, etc., etc. So I definitely encourage everyone to go to the Coming Home to Pacifica event from January 17th to 19th. They can hang out and meet you. You'll be there a whole weekend, I believe.
Yeah, I'll be there, and again, I'll be there with Will Lin, who is into film and who is I like to call him my mythologist buddy. You know, he is such a fountain of knowledge, and has a really unique way of sort of framing story and looking at any film really, or any story as a myth. And so it'll be great to have him there as well, because he can go really deep. You know, he can do these really deep dives into mythology. So it's we like to tag team. It's a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to discovering Pacifica. I've heard a great deal about it.
Yeah, you'll love it. It's a school that will welcome you, and it's a great place for depth and mythology and and this kind of art that you've been making. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure to spend some time with you.